We'll then transfer over and start talking about considerations for rent relief and how to have these types of conversations with your landlord. And then after that, we'll talk about negotiating other types of debt relief. So for example, student loans or credit cards, things of that nature. So there we are in our glam shots. It is, I did not wear fleece today for the first time in very many days. So that was a big deal. But just by way of background, I am an arbitrator and a mediator. I am a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for 20 years. I've both worked as a litigator, and I was the global head of a dispute resolution program for a large insurance company for a number of years. And throughout the time that our country was enduring Hurricane Katrina and Rita and the financial crisis, and then of course Sandy after that. So we'll try to leverage some of that experience in the context of our discussion today. So Victoria, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Victoria Alexander, and I'm a real estate broker. I've spent the last couple weeks helping landlords and tenants negotiate new terms or payment plans or lots of other options that we're trying to explore to get everybody to work together to find solutions. I've been doing real estate and own my own company for over 15 years, and just like Erin, I lived through Hurricane Sandy and other crises like the financial crisis of 2009, and really feel like, living through those experiences given me a lot of insight into how to navigate this crisis, even though it's very different than those experiences.
Okay. So let me just say, because I'm sort of conditioned to qualify any of my remarks with this little caveat. So while I'm a lawyer, the information that I'm conveying today is sort of negotiation tips and ideas for you, and not legal advice. However, if anything that is conveyed today does sort of raise a red flag in your mind, and you wanted to reach out to either of us for advice on finding a lawyer, I don't provide legal advice in that capacity. I do negotiations exclusively, but we'd certainly be happy to help you find somebody if it seems like that might be helpful to you. Okay. So let's start out with the negotiation piece, and I think that this is important to frame our conversation. For a lot of the people that I've spoken to over the course of the past couple of weeks, approaching either your landlord or really any creditor is a conversation that a lot of people just very plainly don't want to have. It can be really uncomfortable. We're all already very raw, and this pandemic has affected many of us in some very personal and to be blunt, quite awful ways, right? So we're already often coming into these conversations from a place where you sort of feel vulnerable, and when those conversations relate to your home, right, and your place of safety, then that makes it even more, pardon me, it makes the stakes feel even higher. And I think that a lot of people also sort of feel like they're coming into these discussions where the power imbalance is not in their favor. So what we'll try to do is to deconstruct that a little bit and talk about how you can strategize having a conversation where you are coming into it from a place where you're calmer, you're more informed, and you understand what you need or want to get from the discussion. So from my perspective, as somebody who teaches negotiation, I think it's important to frame it as it's a communication process. We all are doing it all day, every day, regardless of whether you are identifying these communications that we're all having as a, sort of proper negotiation, especially now when many of us living in such tight quarters, and there's so many things that need to be negotiated. You're doing it all the time. You probably already have negotiation style and skills, And I think that this is if there's any kind of a benefit to this moment, which there are certainly very few, it's a time to perhaps think about how you approach these types of conversations, where your strengths lie, and where you need to focus on building your skills a little bit. The other part of this is that it's a communication process where you and the other person or the other people that you are engaging with are all looking to sort of build a new solution that is of mutual benefit. So it is my suggestion that when you are approaching a negotiation conversation, not to think of it as something that you are asking for, but to think of it as building sort of a bridge to a better situation for everybody who's involved in that conversation. I think that when you enter the conversation thinking about it as asking, then you do tend to cede a little bit of the power, maybe just in your own head, over to the other person. Whereas if you are looking at this as a problem-solving exercise and a way that both of you can sort of benefit in the end, then that helps, I think, to make it a little bit more approachable. All right. So, as a mediator and somebody who sort of is witness to negotiations all of the time, I think of negotiation as having a series of different steps that are involved. And the first step, which I think is often missed by people who are, think of themselves as experienced negotiators, or people who are perhaps more new to it, is this first step, which is the planning stage. So people often sort of jump in to this negotiation conversation without first taking a moment to understand what they want to get out of that discussion and how they can possibly do that. So here is a sort of short list of my suggestions for things to think about before you enter into any of these discussions. And again, when we're back in our normal lives, where we're actually sort of meeting people in person, you don't have the luxury to sort of take a step back sometimes and to do this kind of an analysis, because these kind of conversations may be coming to you on the fly. Whereas now, when we're thinking about negotiating with regards to your rent or your credit cards, or whatever the relief is that you have in mind for yourself, you can think about that conversation and make a plan for it in advance, which I think is a big help to many of us. So the first thing to do is to collect information. And we'll go through this more specifically as we continue with the presentation. But generally speaking, when I say collect information in this regard, it's, what is the underlying agreement, whether that is your rental agreement, whether it is the credit card agreement or your student loan agreement. Many of us don't have those things anymore because you sign it and then it sort of disappears into either the shredder or a clever file somewhere that will be found in 20 years, right? Or at least that's what I do. You can get this stuff online. So I would say that one of the ideal places to start is to sort of look at the agreement that is framing the relationship you have with this other person or this other company that you need to negotiate with, okay? And we'll talk more about that as we go through. The next step is to set goals. So if you are in a position where you need to renegotiate the terms of, the payment structure relating to your rent, or relating to, credit card payments or what have you, you need to be specific with yourself first and understand what you can or cannot afford right now, right? And again, we'll go through this in more specifics as it relates to rent and to the other concerns. After that, understand your priorities, right? So here, what I mean here is that as you are thinking about, right, the various different obligations that you have before you right now, is there a way for you to think about, which ones you really need to approach first? Those that you might be able to afford, perhaps partial payments now, or some kind of a renegotiated structure to the current arrangement. And then, which ones do you have to go to first, and which ones, can wait until tomorrow. And then the last stage of this planning segment, I think, is to shift your perspective. And by this, I mean to sort of step out of your own shoes and to think in the shoes of the person with whom you are negotiating. So if that is your landlord, right, and you need to renegotiate the terms of your current rental agreement, how are they going to feel about it? Do you know enough about this person to anticipate their reaction to this? And is there any way that you can frame this discussion in a way that is not you, right, asking for a favor or something along those lines, which you may have been thinking about it as, because I think a lot of people do. But how can we think about this as something that is not just to your benefit, but to theirs as well? And again, we'll get to more of this as we get into the grander discussion relating to rent and the credit cards and the loans and so forth. Okay, so now we are going to turn it over to Victoria, and she is going to give us a brief overview of sort of what her experience has been in helping clients to negotiate with regards to rent, and sort of what is going on in the state right now that may or may not be of help to us.
Thanks for that, Erin. So everybody is aware of the one order that has passed, which is the executive order for 90 days of no evictions. There are other laws that are being proposed about the rent and debt relief and mortgage payments also, and that there's a moratorium for mortgage payments. If that you're making a payment, you can, if you can't make a payment, you can get a deferment with your mortgage company. But there is no law or a precedent right now to say that these monies will not be due in the future. So all you're doing is delaying payments. So for me, that is just a really deep hole of debt to get into if you just stop paying your rent, or you stop paying your mortgage, or you stop paying credit cards. So from my perspective, and what I've been working with landlords and tenants, is landlords still need the income. Tenants don't want to get themselves too deep in the hole. So they are trying to find ways of, like, they're going to reduce your rent for the short amount of time, so that you're paying something instead of nothing, or we're giving you just a discount if you pay on time, or we'll pay a portion of it and then the rest will be due over time, so it's not the whole amount due in the future. So there are different strategies of what landlords are doing, both in the commercial and residential arenas. The other thing, I'm looking at the slide, etc. Look at your agreement. You can try, if you have things like in your commercial lease, like a good guy clause, or if you're having in your insurance policy business interruption that doesn't outline the non-pandemic clause in it. My business interruption has a pandemic clause, so it won't apply for me. But I'm doing the best I can to try to work with my landlords to find solutions that will make sure that they still have income. They have expenses and overhead that they need to cover. I always say something is better than nothing. So working with people so that they want you to stay long-term and not be able to, having 20 empty spaces for them that they can't rent because in the future it's going to be difficult. That is it's better to have 5 spaces that are paying a portion of their rent for a short amount of time and keeping those tenants so that they hopefully can overcome these challenges and move forward. Was there anything else on my notes to talk about that? And I would say that part of the rent and landlord-tenant conversations, when we're collecting information, one, Google and find out what other landlords and tenants have negotiated and what they have come to solutions so that you can see if that is the solution. You know, there are a lot of people thinking outside the box here. You don't need to stick to normal suggestions on how you guys could come to an agreement. So do some research on what other people have been able to work out with their landlords, and also really assess the type of personality of your landlord or the credit card company. If you look at Amex's, what does Amex offer? What have they done in the past? Can you find it on a Reddit, like that somebody worked out and got such a great deal or offer from them to figure out how to do that? Do your homework and collecting information on what strategies other people have used and utilized to get there. Landlords really, and tenants, when you're talking about these, think about their personality type and the interactions you've had with them in the past. If they are already short, if they're already, curt person, or do they talk really slow, or do they always feel like they're bending over backwards for you? Think about it from their perspective and make sure that you're asking for something in the context of their language, of the way they speak, the way that they present information. And like Erin said, don't ask it as being a favor. You're trying to find a mutually beneficial solution, working together so that you guys can both navigate this time. It is not, you didn't do this, they didn't do this. You're in this together to try to figure out a solution so you guys can get to the other side of it. Hopefully, still having a relationship if you had a good relationship beforehand.
Yeah, I would say that, and I was answering a chat when you began speaking, so I'm sorry if I'm reiterating. It's important, I think, for us to note that, there has been a lot of talk about these executive orders that the governor has issued. And so a couple things to note here are, first, courts have by and large been closed across the state over the course of the past few weeks. And specifically in one of the executive orders, there's a moratorium that has been placed on evictions, right? And in addition to that, there is some relief that has been, that one of the orders included, which allows for individuals, right, who have a mortgage to appeal for a moratorium on mortgage payments. To date, there isn't any kind of a rent relief or a way to excuse rent payments aside from individually negotiating those agreements yourself, or perhaps with the other individuals who inhabit the space or the building that you're in. So having said that, most of the agreements that I have seen, the individual residential leases, there's not been, sort of an obvious, help to people in this kind of a circumstance, as there might be on the business side, right? So the commercial leases are a bit different in terms of the protections and then also the insurance. So, you can look at the agreement and may want to have an attorney look at the agreement with you. And certainly if anybody has any questions today, we can try to talk about that as well. But what I would say is, the things that I have heard of over the course of, especially the past couple of weeks, where people have been successful in having these types of conversations with their landlords are, number one, as Victoria suggests, think about the person, right? So who is this landlord? What is your history with this person? How long have you lived in the building? How do you take care of the space? What is your history of making payments on time, right? All of those things go to show that you are an asset, right, to the building, and that you're the kind of tenant that the landlord would probably want to keep, right? And we are all in a very precarious situation right now. Some people are understanding of that, and other people are not. So to the extent that anybody has, entertained this kind of a discussion with their landlord and has had difficulties with it, we would be happy to talk about that here or offline if you would like. But what I would say is, I've seen people have a few months of their rent flat out excused because they had a good relationship with the landlord. I have seen people successfully ask for sort of a forbearance arrangement where there is a period of 3 months. And I think that that's the longest that I've seen, where you don't need to make payments, but then the term of the lease agreement would be extended by 3 months, okay? Also, there have been situations where if you have a forbearance for, let's say, a month or 2 months or 3 months, that the balance, right? So let's say your rent is $3,000 a month. So if it's excused for 3 months, then that $9,000 could be distributed over the course of the remainder of the life of the agreement. Yeah. So let's say you entered into the lease agreement in March, and then as of April, May, and June, you're not able to make payments. Come July, your $3,000 would be increased by that $9,000 that has been, sort of been put into the forbearance mode for those few months. And then the other possibility is just a decrease in the rental payments for a certain period of time. So, I can afford to make 50%. Can we have the other 50% forgiven for a certain period of time? Can it be applied in the future in a way that would be easier for you to make? So the things that I would suggest you need to think about before having this conversation are, what are the options for you, right, in meeting your rent obligations? What do you think, based upon the history of your relationship with the landlord, why do they want to keep you? What else is going on in the building? Do you know anything with regards to any of the neighbors' discussions with the landlord? And then, thinking about how to structure that conversation in a way where you try to be, at least initially, as collaborative as possible. Knowing that we are still, right, in the moratorium period for evictions, but that's also a finite period of time, and courts are starting to open up over the course of the next couple of weeks in a limited capacity, but there will be more opportunities to go to court. So maybe, Victoria, what would make sense is I think that there were a few comments that came through in the chat. So if we wanted to sort of break right now and then talk about any questions that people have relating specifically to rent, and then we'll take that for a few minutes and then go on to the rest of it. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. I'm going to unmute everybody, but then just mute yourself if you want to not say anything. Okay?
On the patio.
Oh,
mute.
you definitely want the baby.
Baby. You definitely want to hear from the baby. What the questions are. Anybody have any questions?
Okay, so the cases somebody asked about, so those the examples that I provided of people either getting their rent forgiven or whatever the other relationships were, it was in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Okay, let's see. What else do we have?
Can I ask a question? Okay, sorry. So we have a license agreement. Sorry, we have a license agreement, and I don't know how that holds between a lease, because I just feel like there's a lot of gray areas. And, like, I know this is also about residential. That's another topic. But I guess the reason why we joined is a lot of the Manhattan landlords aren't that forgiving. And that's why I asked, where are these cases? They have bills to pay. They will do everything to keep you locked into your lease.
Right.
And so I don't know if this is a specific question for lawyers to answer, but I just I feel like landlords are taking advantage of this situation to keep tenants in it. Like, it's hard to negotiate when you've got, I think the gray area for us is we're not allowed to go into the space. So how are we supposed to be paying rent on something that they really should not even have open to begin with?
So tell me about the space so I have a better understanding as to.
They're executive suites, so we are licensed. We have a license agreement so that we're allowed to be in the space. So I assume it's similar to WeWork, but
it's a year-long lease. Well, we can't see it, but it's a year-long.
Oh, sorry.
It's a year-long lease situation that they've structured basically like it's a license, but they structured it like a lease, and so they kind of lock you in for the year. And so there's, in some ways, there's two questions. One is around, or multiple. One is we can't actually safely go to the space, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
New York is on pause.
Yep.
So, even if they say they have someone showing up and they're providing access to the space, like the license agreement says, we can't actually use the space in that way. Right. So that's one issue. I think an additional issue is, there's, like, for example, my lease is set to renew at the beginning of May. And there's an escalator built into it. And, the commercial real estate market is kind of crashing right now.
Yeah.
It's a shitty, excuse my language, it's a shitty time to be locked into a price. Probably 50% of what I'm paying is going to be what's more available on the market. So now the landlord is a jerk. He's one of those, very
greedy,
kind of greedy, nasty types.
Yeah.
And
who will take you to court.
Yeah, happily. So yeah, we have two separate leases. Actually, we're two different companies. But she had one conversation who was very not amenable to hardly any sort of abatement. For my, I guess I'd like to just get the heck out of the space as well. They have a deposit. But the terms of the lease are pretty harsh when I read through it. So that's the rundown of kind of like it's the complicated, like,
it's like, how do you negotiate when the license agreement is not well?
Let me ask a question, because I think that this. I think so it's more of a commercial, right? I understand that you have the lease agreement, commercial engagement, yeah. Do you have commercial property insurance for the space?
No, neither one of us does.
Okay. But it stands to reason that the landlord does, right? Also, if you have a license agreement, it might be, I haven't seen it. There might be different provisions of it that actually could give you some hope in terms of whether there is, I don't know if there's a
Pussyfuck
in there, or if there's, any kind of other release that is possible. This
is so weird.
This is Victoria.
Hi, is this the Hey Mama group?
No, this is the Zoom that Erin and I were doing separately.
Oh, I just tried to enter it and there were like Nazis.
Yeah, I tried to remove them all. Hopefully I got them all out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
That was crazy. I've never been Zoom bombed, so now I know what it's like.
Yeah.
That was so crazy.
That was my
Okay.
first Zoom bombing.
I mean, like the dick was kind of funny at first, but then.
I didn't
Then all the
wait,
other
so
stuff.
which one is this? I'm so confused because I was late to the.
This is the rent negotiation.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Did it start at 11 or at 11:30?
It started at 11
Oh my God, how long were they bombing it for?
for like a minute.
Oh, that was exactly the minute I am.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, now I'm back. Hi.
Who is? I just want to know who Sati is.
Hi,
I think Victoria, in the future, like you shouldn't put the password
It's the Facebook event.
on the Facebook, the public, like make it private somehow.
Well, that's what they've been saying. I'm hosting an event. I just hosted an event 2 weeks ago and we were okay. And then we're hosting one tomorrow night. Sorry, I just turned the mic. And they said that the issue is they're like apparently groups on Facebook and on Instagram where they're sharing Zoom events.
Right.
Like who's Rob Cruderu?
Rob was here in the beginning. He's not a bomber.
Got it.
But Sati, I want to make sure Sati's a real person, right? Not a bomber? Okay.
Oh my gosh, I was so traumatized. That was so scary.
Or the other technique I read about, Victoria, is like you create like a waiting room or something. So
Yeah,
like,
create the waiting room. But then I kept on getting wondering, I don't know, I got distracted, like, oh my God, I forgot to let somebody in because I'd be like deep in conversation.
right.
I kicked out whoever I thought it was, but at first I couldn't tell who the bombers were. What is the point of that? They're just really bored people?
No,
Yeah,
it's actually like far right extremists. Like it's white nationalists. There was a big article in the Times about it.
Do what though? What are they trying to do?
I think they're just trying to intimidate people. They've been apparently bombing AA meetings that are now online, doing pictures of people drinking and like other horrible things. And like ours is about fertility tomorrow night. So I'm hoping that there's nothing horrible. I mean, ours is a private network, but
Right.
yeah, their whole goal is to just intimidate people and scare people and upset people.
I'm not scared.
No, of course not. But like, are you fucking kidding me?
This is annoying.
Yeah, it was very weird.
I'm an old white lady, they said.
Hardly old.
I'm really sad about it, guys. I'm gonna go cry. Some guy on the internet said I'm old, skanky looking white lady.
No.
Exactly.
Sorry about that, guys. So I know Erin's she just texted me like, what's going on? I'm so scared. I'm like, just come back. Where the normal people that are asking real questions are coming back. And Rob, you guys were one of the ones talking about the licensing, which seems really complicated. And I think that, do you have a good landlord-tenant lawyer?
No.
I don't have one, but I think at this point, like if you have a lawyer, like you need probably, because the licensing agreement like adds a layer of complexity that I don't understand. Maybe Erin, now that she's back, she understands the licensing complexity, but I would say I have a, list of people I could send you to call and talk to and try to get some answers. But I feel like I don't understand licensing enough to guide you. One of my landlords was on the call and he sent me that link that I posted, this one, the Pepper Home products. Nope, was that it? No. He had me share a link for copy, and I'll put it in the chat for, oh, here we go. Operators move to flex payment models. For a flex payment model, I feel like it's just, even with the licensing situation, you have the upper hand. So these are just, you shouldn't use this to say to your landlord, but from my perspective is that it will be incredibly hard for them to find a new tenant. I don't know when is the end of your agreement?
A year from now.
A year from now.
Both of us we both have spaces there, so we both are having to automatically renew. They require 90 days.
Notice.
Yes.
So give 90 days notice.
No, but it automatically, prior
to
it.
an annual renewal date.
So, but is this like a co-working space like WeWork?
No, it is executive suites because we work as, I think, month to month model.
I would say it is.
So
We're
let
paying,
me just,
we're paying for the common area space that's shared by many, and then a private office.
I'll let Erin take it.
yeah, well, and I dropped off
During the
a few
bombing.
minutes in horror, and I'm sorry.
So sorry.
Yeah, so, I think that, and again, not having seen the licensing agreement, which I know was an annoying answer, you have to look at it and see what the acts are. This is also completely speculation on my part. To the extent that you want to get out of this, and you want to talk to somebody to sort of like, if they won't negotiate it with you, and you want to pursue litigation to sort of void the contract, there are ways to do that. You would be looking at it more from a contract perspective, and so for example, and this is right, not legal advice, but things to take into consideration. You may very well be in a position where you should talk to somebody. If you don't have a lawyer, the New York City bar and the New York State bar have lots of sort of, you can dial up and get advice before retaining anybody.
Right.
But I would say that, when you entered into the agreement, nobody saw that this could happen, right? So, so there's been a frustration of purpose, perhaps. The other thing is that when the courts do reopen, again, completely speculative on my part, there is probably not going to be a jury in New York City who's going to like to see this, right? And you don't want to get there, but everybody's going to know that, and that is, sort of a feather in your cap, so to speak. The courts are barely open right now. It's still only for essentials, but they are virtually reopening, and so I'm gonna turn the conversation over to talk about the other types of loans. But I think that for you guys, that I would try to talk to somebody and figure out what your recourse is. I don't think you're stuck. I just think that you need to have somebody go through your contract with you and help you to get out of it the way you need to.
Yeah, I think that you have an exit strategy. You just need the right person to guide you out of that exit strategy.
Let me, sorry, Victoria, let me ask, I guess we can see everybody right now. So by show of hands, would you prefer to continue talking about the rental stuff, or would you prefer to move along and to talk about the credit cards and other sort of loan arrangements that may also need to be negotiated? Do we want to talk about rent?
I have one rent question.
Okay,
There's
so
a couple
let's do
rents.
rent. If anybody wants to talk about the other loan stuff, I assume that you have our contact information because you found your way here. So you could just ping us afterwards and we can chat about it afterwards. So anyway.
Allison wrote in the chat about tenants in the same building coming together to sort of leverage their power. So what do you think about that sort of strategy?
It could be powerful, and
I just wonder if it could backfire as well.
it could.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah.
The thing that I think would be good is to walk in and say, listen, none of us are in a position to be paying, but we also have we want to still continue having a relationship with you and having tenancy here after that, because I know if we stop paying when our leases are up, we're out of here. But because we want to work with you, together we can make these payments together to make sure to guarantee you have this income. If you can agree to this, then you've guaranteed income. If you can't come to the table with us, we can't guarantee what kind of payments we can make to you. Everything is so volatile. if we can all get on the same page, I could make a commitment that you are a priority at the top of everybody that's asking me for money if you accept these terms in this arrangement, and you guys would have that power. And I think if you'd have to get a decent amount, 70% of the tenants to get on board to sort of have this leverage. But I would say that that's your leverage, is that we can all agree and make a commitment that you're our first person we pay in all these bills if you'll accept these terms, or else, we're going to pay you what we can and we'll figure it out and, leave it up to, who knows what's happening. Like, people like certainty. The uncertainty and the not willingness to commit to things is what's going to drive them, commitment from you and your past relationship with them. And if it's a good one, that because you paid on time, like if you say to them and they believe you, hey, you're going to be first, we're going to make this arrangement and I'm going to pay you first, and it's going to be 2/3 of my rent, and that's what I can pay, and you're going to forgive the rest of the third, all of us together, so that you have, because I say no matter what I'm doing for real estate, or that something is always better than nothing. If I have to take a lower fee, if I have to bend over backwards, something, knowing that something's there is better than nothing, in my opinion. So having some income for a landlord, or having some security in the future, is better than having no security and not having any idea of what could possibly happen.
Yeah, those are good points.
Oh, sorry.
For a commercial space, would you still think the same thing applies? That's really what I was talking about, is commercial.
I know that's what you're talking about. Erin, what were you going to say in response to what I said?
Quickly, because I see that there's a couple of other questions. It's, I would think of this as a multi-step negotiation, right? So first, it is the negotiation amongst the group of stakeholders, right? The tenants, and coming together and trying to define what are the ideal renegotiation of the payment structure proposals that we all see as workable amongst ourselves. And that probably is its own process, right? And somebody needs to lead it. Mm-hmm. And so to the extent that there are community mediation centers, for example, all over the city, who are up and running virtually on Zoom and hopefully not getting bombed like we were. But that's an option, so that you have somebody else to come in to this, and there's what is it, the Peace Institute, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
has
a that place.
Mediation program. You can also call the New York City Bar Association or the New York State Bar Association.
Legal Aid too. Legal Aid has some research. I don't know how overwhelmed they are, but I turn people to Legal Aid all the time for foreclosure, situations.
And they're going to be in a great position with regards to the housing market right now, because they're going to be very tapped into it. So I think that's probably a really great resource. But so I'm probably Sati, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but I know you had your hand up a couple times, so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for having this forum. I'm so grateful. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
It's so nice to meet or see virtually all of you. I live in Texas. I sent in a chat question, but I don't know if it got lost in the bomb. I live in Texas. I lease a townhome from. He's a private owner. I've never met him. There's a management company. They're a-holes.
The management company is a-holes, but not you.
I have the same problem. They're a nightmare.
A-holes.
Yep.
So
clarifying it, the management company are the a-holes, not necessarily the owner. Do you have any relationship?
I don't know about the owner. I've never dealt with him directly, but I could go on and on, which you don't want to hear about all the problems. Yeah. My point of this question is because, so I signed the original lease. The lease date was July 31st, 2018. And I've paid on-time rent, even despite not having the second bath usable pretty much the whole time I've been here, and many other problems. So I'm trying to be short. So with this COVID-19, I lost my business. I'm trying to pivot currently online, scrambling in the process of all of this chaos. I contacted the management to let them know my current situation, that my funding just evaporated. And that I was working for the first time in my life with charitable foundations to help me cover the rent. I paid $500 down at the beginning of the month to cover a portion of the $1,400 rent. I've been working, like I said, with charitable foundations, and I've apprised them of this process I'm going through, of the pledges I've received. So I've done my due diligence per our agreement of communicating. And then yesterday, I received a notice of the extension of the rental lease. Last year they sent it and it was due by May 31st. Right now, they're asking me to sign it by Friday.
When did you receive it?
What's that?
I'm sorry, when did you receive it for the first time?
Yesterday.
And it has to be signed within 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, I've been asked to make a decision about my continuing with this this lease now, as opposed to May 31st like last year. Yeah. And I was already back from the neurologist, dealing with that whole thing, and I'm just like, what the F-bomb, can somebody help me understand from this management perspective? They're clearly trying to push me out?
No, I think they're trying to lock you in.
Yeah, they're locking you in.
Yeah,
I know
think they don't want to lose you as a tenant. And you're making a legal obligation to committing to paying this rent, and you're doing it in writing, saying that you're going to pay the rent moving for the next couple months, and then now commit to a year. I don't think they're trying to push you out. I think they're trying to lock you in, and this gives you a position of leverage where you can say, I want to renegotiate my terms. I'm sending back here's my counter offer to the lease you've offered me. I could move forward with paying $1,000 a month for the year.
Oh,
whatever you want to do.
Okay, can I cuss here? Thank you, badass lady.
Question to kind of go off of that. So I'm in a similar position. We live in a condo building where we rent from the sponsor unit. We had always rented from private owners in the building who were amazing, and had they been our landlords right now, we would be in a very different position. But unfortunately, these people are dickheads. They just raised our rent. We've been here for a year. They just raised our rent. We met them in the middle for a $50 raise instead of a $100 raise in a market when I said to them, this seems crazy, but we just had a baby, didn't want to move. My partner husband is in the restaurant business. He obviously doesn't have a business right now, and we're dealing with that on the flip side. His landlords are being amazing. But our oven broke 2 days into this, and they insisted on sending someone to the house when I told the repair people that our oven was broken and we had a 6-month-old. They said, we will not come into your house, gloves, mask, whatever, until this is resolved, because the baby's a liability for them. Because God forbid something comes in on a shoe, on a boot, on anything. So they won't fix it. But we are ovenless for the foreseeable future. Now, the repair people have been amazing and said, we will keep checking in with you, but as long as there's a shelter in place order, we're not going to come and repair it. Yeah. We bought a Breville $400 countertop oven, but I emailed the management company because they're rude. One of them sent me just a really vulgar email about how dare you expect me to have them come in and, this needs to get fixed. But since re-signing our lease in February, and sorry, this is kind of long-winded and my baby's screaming, our dishwasher broke and our oven broke. They fixed the dishwasher right before. Sorry, he's fine. He's just screaming.
Totally fine.
But our oven isn't working and will not work for the foreseeable future. Obviously, all the amenities in the building are closed. I sent them an email saying hi, I just spent $400 on an oven so that I can cook food for the foreseeable future. They literally haven't even responded. We didn't ask for a rent discount for March. This was all too new. We paid in full, but now for April. But now that we're deep into April and they haven't responded, I don't know what my next course of action is.
You paid April in full?
Yeah.
You should.
I would have
said paid April minus the $400 at least for the oven.
Yeah.
And you can do that for May and say, May, hey, we actually we thought we were going to return it.
Yeah.
We didn't put it on the April bill because we thought we were going to return it because we thought it would be under 30 days. We used it more than 30 days and now we can't return it. So, and we couldn't let the repair person in because we're all liability to each other. And so I need this to be taken care of. This, it's not my fault. It's not your fault, but it's the cost of doing business and that you are responsible for doing this and you couldn't provide, a general level of habitability in the space. And you're giving them a break with the $400. Like that's an easy concession, and they should, if they push back on you. I would say that some landlords have just been, I've heard horrible responses of like attacking the people that they.
That's what happens.
Why don't you have savings? Or why haven't you? If you ran your business better, you wouldn't be in this position. It's like it is nobody's fault, and we're all working on that. And like you sound really reasonable and say, listen, we're trying to be reasonable here, and we want to be accommodating. We don't want to stop paying our rent, but we're in this position, and now we not only have to only cook things in this weird oven, then we're getting takeout food or whatever else. We're like,
right. And unfortunately, our neighborhood is Dumbo, Brooklyn. So we actually have only about 3 restaurants that are even doing takeout in the neighborhood. Right. We're super limited. My follow-up to that would be, so we probably shouldn't have paid April. I wasn't sure, given March we had paid in full, and I wasn't sure when this would even out, but can we also ask for something moving forward? Because it appears that shelter in place is going to be here through May and possibly June and July. Can I ask for a concession for the months after that? They just raised our rent, which I'm so sorry. He is like really into
no worries.
I just asked for a concession. I said there's no reason to raise our rent. We've been good tenants and like whatever. And so we agreed on $50, but like now it just feels absurd because after this, I don't know, when we pay the highest rent for our style unit in the building. Because
well, why don't you can also use some market comps too.
I tried that when we
but when it gets closer to May and you start seeing things like coming on the market and not in your building, like in the area, you can use that as leverage. Like, well, listen, all the 1 bedrooms, the prices have dropped 20%. So if we, you can always say, we'll vacate with 30 days. No, when is your lease up? You just re-signed it.
We just re-signed it for the year, but like literally down the road in downtown Brooklyn, we can get a 2 bedrooms for $700 in a full luxury building for $700 less than we're paying now. We're paying $42.50, which is we're in a corner 1 bedroom. It's beautiful, but like,
do you need that right now?
No, exactly. And 5 floors up from us, they even were willing to negotiate the rent. But like I had my baby and it was like too stressful to try and figure out finding a new apartment all within, a couple months.
Right.
But yeah, we would be willing to vacate if they would let us. Our building's not letting any move-ins or move-outs for the foreseeable future either.
The one thing that I think your questions raised also is, if you're getting sort of like vulgar emails or people who are treating you, at base disrespectfully, but also like I have heard more than one story about landlords treating people in sort of a threatening way.
Yeah.
If you don't pay your rent, then, we're going to come after you. And, I'm posting a sign by the elevator.
Right.
So that, everybody is sort of on notice that they're not going to act like human beings. You have to like do your best to just keep track of those things. So, if there's something horrible like that, like a photo or like a sign in the hallway, you have to take a photo of that. You have to keep all of the emails. If you have terrible conversations with people over the phone, make notes afterwards. And this is just to, God forbid, you need those things in the future. Everything is very, I don't know how to say it. Everything is just sort of very big and scary, I think, right now. And so it's hard to remember from day to day, especially if you have little kids around. All this bullshit that's going on. So, just have a place where, you keep notes for yourself so that and then to the extent that any of that ever needs to go somewhere in the future, which I hope it doesn't, then you sort of have it.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, no, totally. I appreciate these insights, and I'm sure everybody else does, because like Sati, we're in this position where like we've kind of just resigned to like, this is the circumstance. But again, with a small baby, with kids and anything, like moving right now in New York City is not happening. So I like looked at my partner and said, should we just not pay rent for 90 days and tell them to fuck themselves? But I don't want to, I have good credit. He has good credit. I don't want
your rent doesn't really, they'd have to report you to the credit authority, and it's actually really hard. Like the worser thing is going to landlord tenant court. Your rent nobody's watching. The credit bureau doesn't monitor your rent payments.
Oh, that's good to know.
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that they ever did report it, you can dispute it too.
And one other question, sorry, I don't mean to be monopolizing this, but
no, not at all.
To other people, is on that note, in terms of like, is it worth it? I mean, these emails were pretty fucked up, excuse my language. Like, they were just really aggressive and unnecessary, and I've tried to keep them, which I have, but is it worth it to like report I emailed the president of the company and he was kind of just dismissive of it. Like, everybody's going through a tough time right now. And I'm like, I would fire the
condo board president.
Well, I don't know if that works, if it makes sense to report
you have a relationship with, you don't have any, because it's the sponsor unit. So you don't have a relationship with the sponsor, who is like the developer. And
right.
And he doesn't also own the management company.
No, he does own this management company.
Oh, so you should get the board.
Yeah.
How many, but the only thing is like, how many units does he have a majority stake in the?
Not anymore. He has a minority.
So I would say to the condo board is different than him. Make a report to the condo board and say, listen, I'm trying to work with the management company for the building on this situation. I want a record of how they're treating me during this thing. And I would like to just submit these records just in good faith, so you guys know that these are the people that represent you also. And because I would like to make sure that I'm paying my due here, so that the maintenance and other things are getting kept up, and working with them, and they are acting like I'm the enemy here. And I would like to just have you guys have this information, so when the time comes for you guys to think about keeping these guys as management companies, that these are how they treated the people that are paying them.
Right.
You guys pay them to do a job, and it is a service. It is a service industry, and they're providing a service. And then if the condo board decides that this is not the service that they are paying for, that they can switch condo management companies in the future when that comes up. But they should not be, you should be telling the condo, find a relationship with the condo thing, be sweet as pie, kill them with kindness, and just be like, I want you guys to know this is how the business that you've hired is treating us.
Yeah. So, I think I have 2 minutes or so, and then I have to go because I have a meeting at 12:30 I have to get ready for. But I just wanted to point out, Melissa, Rob had put up here that DHCR may be a good friend for you, and I think that that's a really great suggestion. And it would, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I don't know.
And then the other thing, Kate, we didn't, we sort of talked about WeWork in terms of like office arrangements, and that was Rob, who's next to you, at least on my screen, that question before. So, I don't have poor Victoria and I were members of the wing, and so everybody probably knows that story. But
they weren't charging us. Once we didn't have access to the space, we waived our fees. I don't think WeWork did the same thing.
So WeWork, for like what it's worth for anybody else, what they told us is we could defer payments. So like we can defer March, April, May, or like April, May, but then we have to do a lump sum payment of $45,000. So that's like, not great. Just what?
You didn't contract for that.
No, we did not.
We're trying to sort of mitigate it, but you can go back and negotiate that with them. You're not obligated to do that. That's their
offer.
It's certainly not in yours. I mean, I wouldn't do it. And the other thing is, do you want to continue with the WeWork, or are you trying to get out of that?
Unclear yet. Part of me feels like it's a fine move to do, to just defer our rent to June, because who knows what will happen with WeWork between now and then. Like, I went to them with, we'll pay a third of our rent. We're not there, but we'll pay, our rent's 15, that we'll pay $5 a month for when we're not there, and then up it back up to 15 when we're there. And they rejected that and said they're just delaying it. But I mean, there's a part of me just following the news of them that thinks like they could go under maybe, and not paying them anything for a few months might be a good move. I just want to know if anybody else has had any success at all, or different conversations than that.
I haven't heard anything with regards to the WeWork. Most of what I've heard has been either, straight commercial leases or sort of, horrible things happening on the residential side. But the
I would
WeWork,
check like a Reddit or something though, maybe. I feel
Yeah,
like there has to
that's a
be a
good idea.
thread for this, and I'm sure that if you just did some digging that you could probably get some real good dirt on what other people are doing. There has to be like a WeWork negotiation thread where everybody's trying to leverage their situation. But I agree with you, they lost their VC money from SoftBank. Like they could go under, and they should. I think it was a bad business model to begin with, the way that they, were price gouging and other stuff. So.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I have to drop off, but it was, I hope that this is helpful for everybody, and you have our, email addresses, and, to the extent that we can be of help in the future, I'd certainly be happy to. I completely recognize that this is incredibly stressful and frustrating, and at some point, the thing that I just keep telling myself and everybody around me is, at some point this will be a story, and that's it, and it will end. I don't know when. I don't think any of us do, but there is power, I think, in the positions that we have, and to take a few minutes to try to think that through, and not to just accept whatever the other side is throwing at you as the only option. I think there's always another option. You just have to ask. Just start the conversation and think about it. As Victoria said before, a lot of these places, they're not gonna fill these spaces. So losing somebody right now is a big hit. So with that, I wish everybody well, and take care.
Erin, just put your email in the chat so people have it. And you guys can email us directly, and we can try to point you, like, I'm not a lawyer. I can give you my years of advice on negotiations for leases, but it would just be like, I could talk you through, like, back and forth. If you want to role play, like, I'm happy to try to figure out ways for you guys to feel like you're in leverage positions. But Osati, you're raising your hand.
Just because I don't see your email. Would you kindly put it in the chat as well?
I did. I'll do it again.
Sorry,
that's okay. But you guys can email us, and if any resources we do have, like I have like a list of loans and other things I am happy to send out too. So you guys have the resources. It's definitely a hard time. So good luck with everything, everybody. I'm gonna unmute everybody so that everybody can say hi, goodbye. How do I do that?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I can't figure out how to unmute people. I need to learn the buttons better. Oh wait, manage participants, unmute all. There we go, unmute all. Okay guys, everybody enjoy your Tuesday. And if anybody has any suggestions on other topics, Erin and I have been doing several of these, and this is the most well-attended one. The other ones have been like 4 or 5 people. So besides the Zoom bombing, I thought it was good. So if you have other things that you wanna talk to us about, let us know what you think, and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Great. Thank you.
Guys. Good luck with everything. Please stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Stay home.
Bye.
Okay, bye guys.